So I didn't mention this on stream when Kev was on, but I thought we would go over the actual segment itself because turns out there's some spicy meatballs in this particular segment. And so this is because Carol Vorderman has been at blows with Johnny Mercer, Ministers for Veterans Affairs, on Twitter, because he promised when he became the Minister for Veterans Affairs that he would deal with the issue of veteran homelessness, which of course has gotten worse by 14% since he took office. So that's a promise that he's broken, despite being vociferous in treating the one group of homelessness that it's okay to have empathy for, apparently. Like, you can have empathy for homeless veterans. They're like the acceptable group to think the homelessness is bad for. But for everybody else, it's a quote-unquote lifestyle choice, in the words of Swella Braverman. Because for some reason, we hold homeless veterans of higher regard than homeless everybody else, when nobody should be homeless, veteran or not. Either way, he promised he would bring homelessness veterans down, and he's not done that. And so Carol Vorderman went at him on Twitter, and they've been sparring, which led to this panel from Patrick Christie's on GB News discussing this with the dubious title of "Nobody Cares What Carol Vorderman Thinks," because she really does rustle plenty of jimmies on the Conservative benches, so much so that actual MPs have come at her. They've threatened her with lawsuits for the things that she said, and now GB News are doing a whole segment about her, but apparently nobody cares what she thinks. But anyway, we'll have a look at what she has to say, and there's a very choice moment coming up in this one as well.
Well, Carol Vorderman appears to have gone full Tonto again. This time she's waded into the debate about veterans' homelessness, and it must have been really hard for Carol to hide her extreme left-wing views when she was cozying up to David Cameron after he made her the Tory government's maths czar. She must...
Well, that's the thing. I mean, it's very true that Carol Vorderman is not somebody who pays attention. Again, one of these people had a political awakening when the Great Noticing happened. That actually turns out the Tories have always been terrible. They were never good. And just because David Cameron looks nice and is professional doesn't mean that he wasn't the worst PM in living memory. So that's a reasonable criticism. But of course, no, they have always been terrible, and she's right to critique them now. And so I will always give her critical support when she does. Although the extreme left-wing views of not wanting people to be homeless, I mean, if that makes me extreme left, then call me Vladimir Lenin.
Must have met with Boris Johnson through gritted teeth at a St David's Day ceremony and put on the acting display of her life when she was cackling away with him there and chowing down. She certainly hid her views really well when she was pictured laughing and joking with Matt Hancock at the races. It's almost like Carol is extremely vocal on Twitter and then in real life she's a completely different person. Anyway, she's previously had serious beef with the wife of our Veterans Minister, Johnny Mercer. She revealed a snobby face, I think, underneath her mask when she tweeted, "Not a degree in sight in spite of expensive private education, so who'd employ them?" That was about me.
I mean, it's okay to mock people for being thick if they're really rich and privileged. If she was doing this to somebody who was underachieving because of circumstances outside of their control, then you might have a point. But if you've been given loads of expensive private education because mummy and daddy paid for it, that's your own fault if you failed, clearly.
Mercer and his wife Felicity. Some people say Carol Vorderman was binned by the BBC for her rabid social media outlets. Carol, of course, says she left of her own accord because she wouldn't be silenced. Now she's gone after Johnny Mercer's record on veterans' homelessness, piling in on top of the Labour candidate for Plymouth, who said that he'd missed his targets to house homeless veterans. Now, Mercer immediately hit back, OK? He said, "You are both deliberately misleading people for clicks, because that makes your shit lonely life feel better. No one normal really cares about your view. They think you're mad. I'm changing veterans' lives. What I came into politics to do. Keep going."
Well, the thing is that she kept ratioing him. So it's clear actually more people agree with her, at least in the Twitterverse, in which is the microcosm of what was happening here. And on top of that, people do actually care about homeless veterans, which is your job, Johnny, that you're failing on, that she was right to criticise. Homelessness amongst the veteran population has increased. It's increased amongst the whole population. Both you and the entirety of the Home Office have completely failed on homelessness, veterans or not. So the fact that you can't even back up your failure with any actual empiricism, just baseless insults, just shows how much you failed on this.
I actually do want to make this very clear. I don't think that Johnny Mercer was well advised to tweet that, OK? I really do not think he was well advised to tweet that. And again, for what it's worth, I actually don't really have any personal problem with Carol Vorderman. I just find her political shift genuinely fascinating. But look, anyone who knows Johnny Mercer knows that he's done the best that he can with veterans' homelessness. He does genuinely care. I would be intrigued.
No, he's not. If he's done the best that he can do, why is it increased by 14%? Surely, if he'd have done all he could do, he would have increased the funding and reduced those numbers. Like, massively failing on the single metric that you set yourself when you came into the role, that's not success. That doesn't show me that he cares on what he's doing here. Misogynist much, Johnny? Oh, you just wait, man-cheater. You just wait until later on in this clip.
Intrigued to know what Carol's views are about the historic prosecutions of veterans who fought in the Troubles. The EU-loving left seems to be broadly in favour of that kind of thing. Is she? Because if she is, I dare say that undermines her outrage about veterans in this case.
I don't think homelessness is a good thing, and I would fight for both veterans and non-veterans to not be homeless. I wouldn't, however, want to stop people who are armed forces who committed war crimes from being prosecuted for those things. Like, those two things are completely separate. I don't think veterans should be homeless, but I also think the ones who committed war crimes during the Troubles should be prosecuted for that.
Scroll through Carol Vorderman's Twitter feed reads like a non-stop anti-Tory barrage. You just wonder, don't you? When Cameron was riding high, she was all over him. Now it looks like Labour are going to get in and she's all over them. Could it perhaps be that she wants to be close to power? Maybe she was promised a place in the House of Lords and didn't get it.
I mean, I find that difficult to believe. Well, no, it's just she's part of the Great Noticing. It's as simple as that. It's as simple as that. In that everybody else has now realised the Tories have always been terrible, and she has come along and realised that. It's a really interesting point. I remember this. It was from one of the ITV daytime shows. I think it was This Morning, with a discussion with Matthew Wright and Carol Vorderman talking about how awful the Tories have been. And Carol Vorderman like, oh, I've just noticed this. Yeah, Matthew Wright was vociferous in talking about how, well, actually, you look at the really bad thing that was done to, say, the Royal Mail privatisation, which was in the Conservative coalition back before the Great Noticing happened, before people realised the Tories were terrible at their jobs. That was a really awful plan that they executed at that point, when it was essentially given off at a super cheap price to mates of the Conservative Party. They've always been cronies, because Matthew Wright actually pays attention to this stuff and actually cares truly. Whilst, you know, Carol Vorderman says good stuff on Twitter now, again, he's right in saying at the time she was palling up with David Cameron, when they were implementing the horrendous austerity policies that caused so much ruin to this country.
That's just speculation, of course. But is Johnny Mercer right? Should people care about Carol Vorderman's views? To respond now, I am joined by GB News presenter Nana Akua, Conservative peer Lord Shaun Bailey, and author and broadcaster Amy Nicole Turner.
Me and Amy are oomphies on Twitter. She's very nice. I like her a lot. Shaun Bailey, big fan of Shaun Bailey though. Mr. Partying during lockdown. Mr. Horrendous campaign for London Mayor.
Nana, should we care about Carol?
I don't care what Carol has to say. The only beef I had with Carol was when she worked for the BBC, that she shouldn't be being political, and she was very political. She told Boris to just go now. I think she called him, she was disgusted by the Prime Minister. She kept tweeting out all this vile bilge towards the members of the Tory party, and I just think that was unacceptable working for the BBC. But now she's left, she can say whatever she likes. I think it's a bit rich that she should be complaining that she's getting backlash, because I think it was actually her that started the whole stuff with Johnny Mercer anyway, and then she's complaining that his wife...
I mean, maybe it's fine for public figures to critique politicians for not holding themselves to accountable for their pledges. She's getting backlash for saying you had this policy and you failed on it. That's going to happen, but I don't think it should happen when the point that she's making is so salient as you said you'd do this thing and then you didn't.
Is sending her messages or something, tweeting stuff to her or whatever. This is like, if you step into that area and start criticising people in that way, then don't be surprised if it comes back at you.
Shaun, was Johnny Mercer right to hit back in the way that he did? I mean, he absolutely went to town, so she has a, well, rubbish life and that she's mad and things like that.
You've got to look at the history here. She basically piled in on Johnny, organised, piled in on him and his wife. So he's a human being. At some point, he said, you know what, I've had enough of this. And also, she was factually incorrect. And if you look at her Twitter feed, you'd have to see she probably knew she was and just wanted to start a fight and point at Johnny again. And the one thing I know about Johnny Mercer, he deeply cares about what he is doing. He actually believes in it. You could be
She was factually correct. He has failed on his pledge. That is 100% true. Why is he impugning her for lying when she was the one telling the truth here?
Cynical about politics and ministers and the like, but he believes in this. And I think you just saw a man who thought,
Oh, but it's fine. It's fine that he's failed on the pledge that he made because he believes he's a nice guy deep down. This is unironically exactly what Starmerites are like. It doesn't matter if he failed on this stuff. It doesn't matter if all of these pledges got broken, but he does care deep down, I believe. I have bought the magic beans.
I'm not having that because I've come to politics to help homeless veterans and I'm trying my best.
Just before I go to Amy, I think it's important to have a bit of context on this. So Johnny Mercer has been talking about ending rough sleeping amongst our veterans community, which I know is an issue that, frankly, well, I think everyone in the country should really care about. Veterans, people who fought for this country, should not be sleeping rough on the streets. There is a technicality, isn't there, between giving someone a permanent house and taking them off the street and putting them into some kind of sheltered accommodation. And that's kind of where the controversy was lying in this, Shaun, wasn't it?
Yeah, that's right. And look, and when his Labour opposition replied, all you've got to remember, there's a political bias, there's a political need, you know, and that person is responding through their political lens. Because if they were
Yeah, that's true. He didn't say rough sleeping. They're still just making stuff up.
really concerned, if they really thought Rishi should get rid of him, where were they when, I don't know, Dawn Butler did what she did, or I don't know, any Labour, but where were they when it happened? If they're really outraged about the interplay between the public and MPs, they should be outraged for everyone, not just when it's Conservative.
Amy, your views on this. Does Carol have a place in the political discourse, do you think?
I think if there was a poll right now, Johnny Mercer versus Carol Vorderman, Carol Vorderman would absolutely trounce him because she is incredibly popular at the moment. And I think that's because...
Also, I'd like to point out, are they trying to cancel Carol Vorderman here? If this was a rightoid attacking a Labour politician and there was a panel of people, media figures saying, wasn't it terrible how they did, they would accuse them of doing cancellations, right? That's exactly what they would say if it was the other way around.
She just knows when something stinks. Like, she's bringing the Tories the receipt.
She's got more followers on Twitter, that's all it is.
It's because our national broadcaster supported her for years.
The reason I think I respect her at the moment is because you've got those pictures of her with David Cameron, and she's very open. She used to vote Conservative. She was a Tory, and she is sick of what the party has become, which I think is a position that a lot of Conservative voters can relate to.
I mean, what it's become... I love you, Amy, but it's always been this terrible. In fact, it was probably worse during the coalition, even with their Lib Dem accomplices, because of all the austerity stuff. At least Boris Johnson pretended to invest.
Relate to it, but we won't go speaking in that way.
I would have some sympathy for that if she conducted herself like a grown-up. She doesn't. She organises pile-ins. Two of us sat on this sofa have been piled in on her.
Yeah.
Piled in by her. And look, on one hand, she's got all that stuff, you know.
The thing is, and they'll say that pile-ins are being happen, but it's just because somebody's quote tweeted you. Like, Twitter is the public sphere. If you tweet something out, people will dunk on you for it. And if they quote tweet it to their followers will see it. If you don't want that to happen, get off social media. It's the nature of the platform.
No, she's a serious political commentator. And then if you look at her Instagram, it's all pictures of her bums and her boobs. So what is it? What is it here? She can't be both.
But that...
And at the end of the day, if you're going to...
Now, this is why I wanted to watch this segment, because they're just like outrageous sexism. Just saying, how dare Carol Vorderman attempt to do political commentary and political criticism whilst owning the female body. And of course, we'd like to point out as well that this is actually kind of just not even that true. I mean, there's a picture of her at LBC promoting the fact that she's on LBC. I guess this is like a stylish photo, but the rest of it is just her doing things on the internet or promoting things. Like, this is her book that she's promoting, a bit about Rishi Sunak, her in hospital. This is, even if this criticism was of something that she had done, it would have been misogynistic and stupid because, you know, Instagram is a platform for posting pictures of yourself. Of course she's going to post pictures of herself on it. That's what the platform is for. It's a photo application for social media. But that's not even true because that's not what her Instagram feed is. She actually uses it for political stuff as well. So he's wrong on like multiple different accounts here.
Do what she did, right? Make sure you do it factually. And I will say, I'm with Nana. Once she was not working for the BBC, and I think the BBC did the right thing by asking her to consider her position.
But of course, Mr. Shaun Bailey has always been a paragon of conducting himself in a perfect manner and has never, ever, ever broken the law by partying whilst people weren't allowed to go to their family members' funerals, or unless only small congregations at the very least.
She can say what she wants to say.
You know what, though? I think without her, we wouldn't have seen Michelle Mone in the position she is now. It was her. that she
it's
she
not her
exposed
job.
those
I don't
VIP
think
loans.
that's
She
true.
she
I
has
think
done
that's
she's
true. I
done
think
so
that's
much in bringing things into the public arena
think-
that we really care
I
about.
think-
For example, the fact that Johnny Mercer's wife is suddenly earning 3 times as much on her salary, which is as his personal secretary. She's earned 3 times
Yeah,
more
but
in
you
the
say
last
3
year.
times.
No, but it's calling out cronyism in politics is bad. Of course, she doesn't do it when Labour do it because red team good, blue team bad. But these people seem to be mad at the fact that she has indeed pointed out that there is level of underhandedness and brown envelopeness in our political process. That it is all who you know. It is all nepotism. And she's right to call it out. She should just be calling out for everybody. But they seem to be taking umbrage with the fact that she even called out in the first place. Oh, you mentioned it on Twitter. It's a pile-on. Yeah, get with the programme.
tax money. That's
Yeah,
our
you say
money.
3 times, but she, first and foremost, she does the work. Let's be very clear. She works. And secondly, what's 3 times as much? What?
In
What's
1
she
year,
earning?
a 3 times pay rise. Have you had a 3 times pay rise in
from
1 year?
what?
I haven't.
From what?
I don't
If
think
you go-
many people
if you,
have.
I don't know
and
these
that's the
things. But
type
if you
of-
go from part-time to full-time, who knows?
But that is the type
No.
of thing
But
that is
that's none of
within
her
the public
business. No, it's none of
interest.
her
That
business.
is our
That's-
business.
no, I
It
don't
is our
think it is.
business.
No, I don't think it
listen,
is.
that's the type of thing it can be displayed in a disingenuous way. If she wants to do these things, fine. I think Johnny's right. Nobody normal cares what she thinks. But
No,
you have-
they do.
But you have to do it
I've got an
properly.
interesting,
Again, she kept ratioing him. But the proof is in the pudding.
interesting email here. Just quickly, the emails are really kicking off on this. gbviews@gbnews.com. Dear Patrick, Johnny Mercer is my MP. I am not a Tory. He has done his utmost for homeless veterans. He cares deeply about their plight. The PM that let him down was Boris Johnson. That's from Clive in Plymouth. So that guy's got...
Boris Johnson was the only person who invested in this stuff anyway. Like, Boris Johnson was the only like, again, critical support here. But the one who actually did public investment was Boris Johnson. The people who really failed homelessness is George Osborne and David Cameron, who cut back all those budgets. But you'd think that if you were in the position of caring about these things, you'd have actually fought your current administration for more funding for it, and he just hasn't. So he's still failed, and the pledge is something that he's not stuck to actually end homelessness, or rub sleeving homelessness, right? So he's failed. He has failed, and she's right to criticise him. And I don't believe that that emailer is real, if given what we know about the situation. But even so, outrageous sexism from Shaun Bailey and complete nonsense logic from people, and of course, both sidesism from everybody else. So Johnny Mercer sucks. Carol Vorderman at least has now noticed. But the star of this one we'll give to Matthew Wright for being somebody who knew the Tories were bad all along. Hey there, if you enjoyed the video, make sure that you like and leave a comment. That helps the video out in the algorithm. If you subscribe and ring the bell, it'll let you know when I go live. I stream every day on YouTube and Twitch. You can also follow all of my socials down in the description. And if you want to support me in a more financial manner, there's a join button for membership to just 99p to be a member on YouTube, as well as a Patreon, and there's some merch there as well. And hopefully I'll catch you on the next video. Take care.